teams that still should be salty about a loss all time, anytime in the NFL, something they should still be pissed off, sorry, London, about, even today. Peter, go ahead. Take the first one.
Hello, London. Mike, I've got to take the Saints-Rams missed interference call in the NFC Championship game. How can you not call that? That's like the worst missed call. It may not in NFL history, but certainly in recent NFL history. Without any question, that's got to be number one. Every time I look at this play, I still think, how possibly is anybody looking at that and not calling it? I still just can't believe it.
And the thing that still amazes me, and even though it's against the rules to do it, I'm amazed that Al Riveron didn't exercise his prerogative to yell at the referee, someone needs to drop a flag now, because if you don't, we're going to have a mess unlike any mess we've ever had. And they're still dealing with how to clean up that mess properly more than 2 years later. I'm going to go with the Tuck rule game. Raiders fans still salty. Raiders employees, coaches, players, anyone still there who has any tie back to that team, and obviously John Gruden back again as the head coach, still upset about it. I'm told that at one point, and this lasted for a while, back when they actually used fax machines, some of the employees of the Raiders organization had a still frame of Tom Brady getting hit by Charles Woodson at the top of the cover page of every fax that they sent out. That's how upset the organization still was about that call that robbed them of a berth in the AFC Championship in 2001.
Hey, look, you talk to Amy Trask now. Obviously, he was Al Davis's right-hand person with the Raiders. You talk to Amy Trask, and it takes her about 6 words to get her blood boiling and the veins sticking out of her neck. And, you know, the thing about Raiders people, once you work for the Raiders, you learn one thing from Al Davis. Vengeance is ours. And, you know, because that's, Al always operated that way. So if you work for the Raiders, you always felt like everybody's out to get us.
All right, and you know, one last thing about it. They ultimately changed that rule, but they waited like a decade to do it because they knew how obvious it would have been if they changed that rule in the aftermath. So I think it was like a 10 or 11-year statute of limitations that expired before they changed that rule. All right, Peter, round 2, you're up.
You know, my favorite play, just when I start thinking about plays officials screwed up, is the Fail Mary game. And, you know, the Seattle Green Bay game, where in the end zone there is you know, a mugging and a catch and all this. And, you know, basically you just can't believe that this is how this game really ended. You know, it's just hard to believe that they called a touchdown for it. It wasn't a touchdown, but they called it a touchdown.
And that moment ended the lockout of the regular officials back in 2012. That 3 weeks, it wasn't as big of a disaster as people in the league office feared it was going to be. But once that happened, by Thursday night, the regular officials were back on the job. And
yeah, because that was a Monday night game.
Yeah. And it also, you know, and it's impossible because you'd have to go back and play the rest of the season. But if you just go apples to apples and you take that loss and turn it into a win for the Packers, I think they would have had a bye, a home game in the playoffs. You know, things may have gone differently for them in the 2012 postseason if that loss had been a win. Next one for me, I'll go the Dez Bryant game from 2014, Cowboys and the Packers. I still think it was a catch. I think it was ruled, and I know it was ruled a catch on the field. I don't think there was enough, even under the prevailing definition of a catch at the time, to overturn the ruling on the field with clear and obvious evidence or indisputable visual evidence, the standard was at the time. He's got the ball. He's got multiple feet down. There's the ruling. The official comes over and says, that's a catch. I don't think there's nearly enough to say it wasn't, Peter. And if I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm still upset about it 7 years later.
Yeah, I don't blame you for being upset because look at every step of the way on this. And I totally understand by virtue of the rule, when his hand hit the ground, the ball moved and all that. But, man, he had the ball in his hand for a long time, Mike.
That lunging, that's the football move that they always talked about that wasn't codified. The football move, the lunging of the ball, multiple steps and the lunging of the ball, and the ruling on the field is it's a catch. And there's not indisputable visual evidence to overturn that ruling on the field. All right, round 3, Peter, you're up.
Mike, my favorite bad call of all time, or miscall or no call of all time, it has to be the snowplow game in New England in 1982. Obviously, you remember this. You know, it was a snowy day in Foxborough, Dolphins against the Patriots. And a guy on work release from a local prison was waved out on the field because he had the snowplow. Okay, and a guy was waved out on the field by Patriots coach Ron Meyer. And on the other sideline, Don Shula is screaming, "You can't do that, you can't do that." But the snowplow comes on the field, clears a path, and John Smith, the kicker for the Patriots, kicks the field goal that wins the game, and the Dolphins lose. I remember Don Shula, even late in his career, I'm serious, this is the loss he was most bitter at, because he thought it was the loss that went against the spirit of every rule, that the home team cleared off a spot for its field goal kicker, which should not have happened. And so I don't know, it's hilarious to watch, and it's hilarious also to watch and listen to Don Shula afterwards just, kind of go bat crap over it.
After all these years, it never really occurred to me, if you're going to do something shady and you need someone to actually do it, pick the guy who's already going back to prison anyway. Why does he care? Right?
The guy on work release from prison.
Yeah. He's going back to jail anyway. Who cares if he does something he shouldn't have done? All right, well, I think the control room knows what my final pick for this draft will be. Do I even need to say it? December 28, 1975. I was 10 years old. The Vikings had started that season 10-0. It was their best team of the 70s. The game is over. Roger Staubach pumps left, throws right. Nate Wright thrown to the ground by Drew Pearson. Paul Krause knows it. Paul Krause is pointing to him. He interfered. The officials were blind. Pearson threw the ball out of the stadium. One of the officials got hit in the head with a whiskey bottle, and there it is. Slow motion. I really don't need to see it again. But, Peter, look, I don't know anything about technique for defensive backs in 1975, but diving forward as the ball is coming in does not seem to be the acceptable way to defend. He was pushed. He was shoved. And, yes, I am still salty about that 45 years later.
But, Mike, you saw the flag come in, okay, right after that play. What did the official rule on that flag? Did he?
That wasn't a flag.
DPI?
That wasn't a flag. Somebody threw an orange. It wasn't a flag. I've seen that Zapruder film many times.
It looked like a flag.
I remember when I was a kid and I saw it flash across the bottom of the screen. I thought it was too. I was distraught. And as I've said many times before, that was the low point of my childhood. And if that's the low point of anyone's childhood, it's not a bad childhood. If that's the worst thing that happened to me,
Mike,
from the age of 1 to 18, pretty good.
How did you become a Vikings fan?
Well, I grew up in Steelers territory, and everybody in the town that I lived in was a Steelers fan, and the Steelers were good then, and of course you had to be a Steelers fan, and Peter, you've known me long enough to know that the last thing I'm going to do is what I'm supposed to do, so I rebelled against being a Steelers fan. I would have had a much better childhood if I had been. 4 Super Bowl championships, that would have been nice, but, it's just there was just something about the purple. There was something about, the Vikings were good at the time, so they were on TV. So I just kind of I like the color, I like the helmet, I like Fran Tarkenton, I love Chuck Foreman, I love John Gilliam, if you remember him, number 42, and that was that. And I caught the virus, and there are many times I wish I hadn't.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.